What is going on, everybody? It is your boy Arrows here, and we're doing something a little different, something a little zany, something a little out there today. I have purchased on TCG Live the Rockets Mewtwo EX League Battle Deck. We're going to look over the cards, and I am going to tell you guys what I think of the deck, any changes I would make to the deck, and how it compares to League Battle decks that we have had in the past. If you guys have followed the channel, know me, you know that the League Battle Deck is one of my all-time favorite products that Pokemon releases. They generally release one, maybe two a year, and they are generally some of the best products to buy for new players, especially if your new player wants to be super competitive at Pokemon. Because ever since their inception, when they changed from Battle Arena decks that weren't that good to the League Battle decks, each of them have been at that level that you could take them out of the box, go play at your locals, go play at low level tournaments like league challenges, and do very very well with them. In fact, some of the early ones, the Charizard Reshiram Tag Team GX deck, the League Battle deck was only 2 or 3 cards off of a regionals winning build that obviously performed really well because it won a regionals. And since then, we've had Pikachu Zekrom tag team, RCS Dialga Palkia tag team with Zacian V. We've had Charizard. We've had Gardevoir. We've had Dragapult. We've had Single Strike and Rapid Strike Urshifus. We've had Mew VMAX, the Fusion Strike one. We've had a ton of great League battle decks that have come out since then. Inteleon VMAX was an amazing League battle deck, very underrated when it came out. So, how does this one compare? Well, let's take a look. This one is very centered around Team Rockets Mewtwo EX and its Erasure Ball ability. And there's nothing wrong with that, but let's take a look at how the card measures up. Team Rockets Mewtwo EX has 280 HP, is a Psychic type, has the ability Power Saver. Power Saver says you cannot attack with Mewtwo unless you have 4 or more Team Rockets Pokemon to play. This entire Pokemon lineup is Team Rocket based, so it is going to be very easy to keep that up unless your opponent's running a deck with a ton of ways of switching out Pokemon and knocking them out to try to render your Mewtwo useless. It also has the attack Erasure Ball for 2 Psychic Energies and 1 Colorless Energy. It does 160 damage, and then you may discard up to 2 energy, basic energy. No, 2 energy. 2 energy from your benched Pokemon. This attack does 60 more damage for each card you discarded this way. So if you discard 1 energy, you're doing 220. If you discard 2 energy, you're doing 280. Those are pretty solid numbers in the early game. They're going to help you take out some setup Pokemon. They're going to be really good against those basic EXs, but they are going to potentially struggle a little bit against some of the stage 2 EXs that do a considerable amount of damage back to you, or cards that hit hard to begin with. Dark Weakness is definitely not something you want to have in this current format. Marnie's Grimmsnarl is a thing. Charizard is a thing. En's Zoroark is always capable of taking clutch knockouts really easily, and having a Dark Weakness just makes it easier. I'm missing one. Mega Absol is a thing. There are a ton of Mega Sharpedo has potential to be really strong with Petron and poisoning. Mega Gengar could be a threat in the future. Having a Dark Weakness is not something that you want to take lightly. Fighting Resistance is kind of okay. There's not really a ton of prominent fighting decks in the format right now that are going to be attacking you. Goldengo runs rocks, but Soul Rock would be the only other attacker there, and its 70 damage isn't affected by weakness and or resistance. So that's kind of there. This deck very much reminds me of the old Mewtwo V-Star deck. Pop a bunch of energy on the bench, get rid of all that energy, and then deal some massive damage. But I think the Mewtwo V-Star might have actually tapped out at a higher damage output than this does. Don't quote me on that. So, now that we're familiar with our star player, let's take a look at some of the supporting cast. Now, to combat the energy discard required for this attack to do this massive damage, we're running 3 copies of Team Rockets Tarantola and 3 copies of Team Rockets Spidops. Spidops is the real superstar supporting player here because it has the ability Charging Up. Charging Up says once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to this Pokemon. You need to be able to do this to power up Mewtwo's attack to get that extra damage. So if you have 2 Rocket Spidops on the bench, you are going to be attaching 2 energies per turn after you discard them with Mewtwo. You're going to constantly be able to push that 280. But sometimes 280 isn't enough, especially if stage 1 megas start becoming a thing. Those crack out at 330 HP, and a lot of them can one-shot Mewtwo turn. How do we get around that? Well, we get around that with the Team Rockets Zubat line. The Zubat is nothing special. The Golbat, when you play it, it has the ability Sneaky Bite. When you evolve it from one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. That's 300 damage with Mewtwo. That is real good. It also has Confuse Ray for 1. It does 30 with 80 HP, but we don't care about the stats on this because it's a supporting player. It's never going to find itself in the active spot, hopefully, as a Golbat. As a Crobat, though, it does serve as a pretty decent secondary attacker. With its ability Biting Spree, which is an upgraded version of Sneaky Bite. Biting Spree, when you play this Pokemon to evolve one of your Pokemon during your turn, you may choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and put 2 damage counters on them. This is a really strong attack unless you're playing Gardevoir because they are 100% going to Monkey Dory that damage back onto you. So be very, very careful how you're placing this. I would suggest always try to place it in a way, if you're playing against something with Monkey Dory, that you're going to be able to KO that Pokemon. We have 1 copy of Team Rockets Articuno. Has 120 HP, and its ability is super good. It's going to keep these low HP setup Pokemon. It's going to keep their base forms alive long enough for you to do stuff with, because it prevents all effects of attacks used by your opponent's Pokemon done to your basic Team Rockets Pokemon. So it's going to stop Dragapult from placing the 6 damage counters. It's going to stop Marnie's Grimmsnarl EX from doing the 30 damage when it does its attack. It's going to keep your bench pretty protected from lots of things. And then we have Team Rockets Mimikyu to round out. It has the attack Gemstone Mimicry. Choose one of your opponent's active Terra Pokemon's attacks and use it as its attack. This actually has a lot more usage right now than you think. In the late game, this can come up and copy a Charizard and smack that Charizard for potential game-ending death. This could come up and copy Terra. What's the name? Ogerpon, the grass Ogerpon. If you have a decent amount of energy attached to it, which you can use with Team Rocket's energy, you can use Energy Switch. You're going to be able to take a surprise KO on a Pokemon that your opponent might think is safe. I think about other strong Terra Pokemon. Strong Terra Pokemon that you attack with. Flareon in Flareon box, Terrapegos. There's a ton of really good things that you can choose to copy and do a pretty decent amount of damage. So I do like the fact that the Mimikyu and the Articuno are 1-1. Also, I just realized we forgot to talk about the actual attack on the Crobat. Assassin's Return does 120 for 2 energies, and then you may put this Pokemon into your hand, discard all cards attached to it. Not bad. So the Pokemon line is very, very centered around trying to get Mewtwo into killing position, which I think is really smart. The trainer lineup, I am very okay with like one exception. That exception is this. Because you are running a lot of setup Pokemon, there's a very good chance that you're going to lose something in the early turns, depending on what you're playing. The Pokemon meta right now is very aggressive, with a good number of decks having a way to take a KO on their turn too. So if your opponent goes first, you have to waste a turn setting up. Against Mewtwo, the best thing to do on those setups is to get rid of these if possible. If your opponent cannot accelerate energy with Spide Ops, this Mewtwo is pretty neutered going forward, potentially only being able to do 160 to 220 damage for 3 energies. So I don't agree with this as your A spec. I personally feel like your A spec should have been really. I feel like your A spec should have been Unfair Stamp. You can use this card only if any of your other Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand into their deck. Then you draw 5, your opponent draws 2. Now we do have a Team Rockets card that does this, that does something very similar to this, but I feel like this just makes the deck much more viable than Scramble Switch. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Scramble Switch. Scramble Switch is a very good card. I just feel like were better options to put in this spot. Switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. If you do, you may move any amount of energy from the Pokemon you moved to your bench to the new active Pokemon. Because Mewtwo requires extra energies of the discard as well, if you use this to promote a new Mewtwo and you give it 3 energies and you don't have any other energies, that Mewtwo's only doing 160 damage, which isn't that great, even against some of the basic EXs, and depending on the matchup, is going to open up your Mewtwo to KO before it can really take a prize. Whereas Unfair Stamp would allow you to make your Pokemon work for it after a KO by dropping them down to 2 cards. Maybe you get a KO on something, and it kind of puts your opponent on the back burner depending on which part of the game. I just feel like it's a better option than Scramble Switch. And I like Scramble Switch, but I just don't think it is a good option for the deck. Especially when we have cards like Team Rockets Archer. You can only use this card. You can use this card only if any of your Team Rockets Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Each player shuffles their hand in their deck, then you draw 5 cards and your opponent draws 3 cards. Really, really good. Your entire Pokemon line is Team Rocket Pokemon. Then we have 1 copy of Petrol. Petrol lets you search your deck for a trainer card, reveal it, and put it in your hand. Shuffle your deck. This is really good. There's a ton of really good options that this gets you into. 2 copies of Energy Switch in case you lose your first Mewtwo and you got to do some shenanigans to power up a second one. 2 copies of Team Rockets Giovanni. This is essentially a prime catcher as a supporter. Switch your active Team Rockets Pokemon with one of your bench Team Rockets Pokemon. Then if you do, switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot. Really good card. 2 copies of Night Stretcher. You're gonna want to recycle those Mewtwo's or recycle energies. This is really good. I would actually probably run this in like 3 if you're gonna build this deck, make changes to this deck competitively. Team Rockets Factory is a really good stadium card in this deck. Once during each player's turn, if they played a supporter card that has Team Rocket in its name from their hand, this turn they may draw 2 cards. Extra card draw is never a bad thing. 4 copies of Team Rocket's Transceiver. This lets you search your deck for a supporter card that has Team Rocket in its name, reveal it, and put it into your hand. It's a really good card. 4 copies of Team Rocket's Ariana. Draw cards so you have 5 cards in your hand. If all your Pokemon in play are Team Rocket's Pokemon, draw 8 instead. Really good card for this deck. And then Team Rocket's Proton. If you go first, you may use this card during your first turn. We have 4 copies of this one. This one is probably the most important opening trainer you want to have. If you go search your deck for the 3 basic Team Rockets Pokemon, reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. If you can open up this in your first turn, you're almost always going for this because you want to be able to set up your board as quickly as possible. 4 copies of Ultra Ball. I will say this until I am blue in the face, arguably the best generic search card in the game, and 2 switches because your Mewtwo does have a very hefty 3 retreat. And you don't want to have it in the active spot unless you're ready to do something with it, potentially. Yeah. So that is the Pokemon and the trainers for the energy. We're running 3 grass, 2 dark, 3 psychic, and 4 Rockets energy. Rockets energy counts as 2. It provides 2 energies that are either psychic or dark. So you can have this provide 2 darks, 2 psychics, 1 dark, 1 psychic, as long as it's attached to a Team Rocket Pokemon. So, what would we do with this for some changes? Well, there's not a lot we can do with this deck as a whole to make changes because it is so Team Rocket eccentric. Cards that we could talk about would be Team Rocket's Great Ball. You could put this in here. Flip a coin. If heads, search your deck for an evolution Team Rockets Pokemon. Reveal it. Put it in your hand. If tails, search your deck for a basic Team Rockets Pokemon. Reveal it. Put it in your head. In your hand. Venture Bomb is okay. Botherbot. Target one of your face down. Turn one of your opponent's face down prize cards face up and choose a random card from your opponent's hand. Your opponent reveals that card. You may have your opponent switch that card. This is kind of good control, but it's not really that great. The only other thing is Team Rocket Watchtower. Colors Pokemon in play. Both yours and your opponents have no abilities. This is really only good against Pokemon that are running the fan package, the Rodon package, and in that case, you have to open this. Otherwise, you're already kind of behind on that. So there's not really a lot of Team Rocket trainers you could put in here. You could make a statement for the Great Balls over the Ultra Balls, but that is entirely up to you. I think Ultra Ball is just better because it gets you whatever you want. Like I said, Unfair Stamp could easily go in over the Scramble Switch. I would increase the number of Night Stretchers because your Mewtwo only has 280 HP. It's probably going to die quite often. Especially with that dark weakness. This is also really good for recycling your Spidops or your Tarantolas. Like I said, if any smart player is going to take these off the board right away. I don't know if I don't really know what else you could replace in here. It's all pretty Team Rocket centric. You could make a case for Precious Trolley and put Arvins in here instead of Proton, because Arvins will fetch your Precious Trolley, which will still get a bunch of your basic Pokemon out. So you can make that change. But as a whole, I don't think that there's too much you can do with this. It seems very, very, very reliant on you having your Team Rocket stuff, which isn't a bad thing. I would maybe put in an extra Mewtwo. Maybe drop the Mimikyu, because the Mimikyu is not always going to be good for you in matches. I would maybe drop the Mimikyu for a 4th Mewtwo. As far as Team Rocket Pokemon go, there's not really a lot of options with these. You have maybe the Orbeetle, because it lets you move damage around. You can maybe make a case for the Persian would be kind of neat, but not really for this build. And there's just not really a ton of stuff that you can do, in my opinion, with the Pokemon line in here. If you wanted to be risky, you could replace this and maybe the Crobat line with 2 more of Spidops and Tarantola, and you could run a You could run a Pheasantipity and a Mew in here if you really wanted to, but it's there's not a lot of like wiggle room with this build, with this deck. So, how do I feel like this ranks against Dragapult, Gardevoir? I think those are the last two we've had. I think the last three we had were Dragapult, Charizard, Gardevoir. How does this and Miraidon? Miraidon was just bad because it still included some of the bulkier VMAX Pokemon that weren't overly great. I feel like this deck is infinitely weaker than Dragapult and Gardevoir, and honestly Charizard as well. I feel like this deck is inherently weaker than those. I feel like the reliance on Mewtwo as your only attacker hurts you if you can't get your engine going more than the other decks do. I definitely think you can still take this to like your locals and have fun with it. But whereas those other league battle decks, you could probably take them out, make like a three to like 5 card variants in those decks and take them like three to like 10 card variants and take those decks to like a regional or a league challenge or a league cup and do very well with it. I don't think this deck has that potential. I could be wrong. But I think I think if we were to look at tournaments that happened during the Journey Together and Destined Rivals portion of the TCG, I feel like you would find better toppings with Ethan's cards, Hop's cards than you will with this. But I still think it is a pretty nifty product. My only other kind of concern with it is because it is so Team Rocket centric, you've missed out on a lot of great reprints that you could have put in here. Cards like Air Balloon, cards like not Arvin because he's rotating, but like cards like Boss's Orders, cards like Bravery Charm to power up your Mewtwo. You could have put in Buddy Poffin. I think it survives. Yes, it does. Could have put in Buddy Poffin. Buddy Poffin would be spectacular here, as it would get you your Tarantolas. It would get you your Zubats. It would get you your Team Rockets Mimikyu without being so reliant on a supporter, opening a supporter. You could like takes out the addition of cards such as counter, like there's no counter catcher in here, which I think is a wild because you are potentially going to find yourself being on the back burner, and this definitely helps with that. Earthen Vessel would rotate. That's why it's not here. That's the other cool thing about League Battle decks is that they generally keep the trainer line. They generally keep all the cards with stuff that's going to survive rotation. But like, I just feel like there was like a ton of other options that we could have put in here and still had like the vibe of the Team Rocket stuff. But I just feel like maybe it was like a lost cause. I do think this is a deck that you can take to like a locals, maybe a league challenge, and do maybe a league challenge. That's like a very big maybe, and do potentially all right with. But I just feel like as a whole, this is a weaker entry into the league battle decks than what we've been used to. I also don't really know what I would have done instead. Maybe an Ethan's deck with Ethan's Adventure or some of the Ethan Pokemon. Maybe a Hop deck because Hop's station was really popular for a bit. There's just definitely feels like there was more things that we could do for this league battle deck that would have been better options than what we got. But I would love to know what you guys think about the Mewtwo Rockets Mewtwo EX league battle deck. Is it something you guys are going to pick up? I still think it's worth picking up. even if it's just for like a fun deck, if you want to play against new people at leagues and you don't want to perhaps overwhelm them. This is a really good product for that. I liked when I ran a Pokemon League that we had a lot of kids come to. I would always play them with weaker decks first, make them feel really comfortable in the setting, and then we built up to some stronger stuff. But as a whole, I definitely feel like this is probably the worst League Battle deck to come out since the Miraidon one. The Miraidon one was pretty bad. Not the Miraidon one wasn't bad because it was bad. It was bad because the format had already evolved quickly out of what that version of Miraidon could do. Yeah, if you're looking for something to pick up for a significant other, a child, or somebody who's just looking at like getting into Pokemon, this isn't the worst product you could buy, but I would still suggest if you could find copies of the Dragapult EX League Battle Deck or the Charizard League Battle Deck, that one might be a little bit harder, or the Gardevoir League Battle Deck, those would definitely be more in your options. Or if you're just looking to play for fun at leagues, you have no aspirations of doing league championships, you can even go on Amazon and find some of those earlier league battle decks, like such as the Urshifus, the or some of the GX stuff. But thank you guys for hanging out, watching the video. I appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ding the notification bell if you want to be alerted when we post any of our card game related content. Have a Merry Christmas if I don't talk to you before then. Happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. Just have fun, enjoy life, play some card games because they're always a good time. And as always, friends, I will see you when I see you. Bye.